Even though every typeface is unique, they each share some standard features. We can use those features to categorize them into common groups. Some typefaces fall into multiple groups, all of that combined with the fact that some classifications end up being too abstract or maybe different based on locations or cultures, is why this topic confuses a lot of beginners. Here's an overview of some of the historical classifications. You can see how overcomplex this looks. With so many typefaces, searching for the right one can be a daunting task. Misunderstanding classifications can make the whole thing even more confusing than knowing no classifications at all. Even though it's more nuanced, historical classification of European Latin type can be useful. When thinking about your ideal typeface for a project, you will most certainly want to evoke a certain feeling. Avoiding an old-type typeface if you're working with a contemporary brand is usually a good practice. Pairing typefaces is also easier if you understand the historical context of type classifications. But don't worry, it's not as hard as some scholars make it out to be, at least from the perspective you need to be able to make good typography decisions for UI design. Before we talk about historical classifications further, and before I share the categories I learned about from Mario Shestak, a great UI designer from my home country who made historical classifications click a bit more for me, and honestly easier to remember, let's go through some of the more common groupings you might have already stumbled upon while looking for typefaces online. The two main categories you need to be able to easily tell apart are serifs and sans serifs. It's easy to recognize them since there is only one question you need to ask yourself. Does this typeface have a serif or not? As you already know, serifs are those little lines attached to the end of a stroke that create glyphs, so a serif typeface is a typeface that has serifs. Although they are stylistic in nature, they are often set to enhance legibility by guiding the eye from one character to another. A lot of research has been done on this topic, and there aren't significant differences between sans serif and serif fonts when it comes to legibility. Most books, magazines, and newspapers use serifs. Most often they can be used to give your design a more classy or elegant feel. Sans means without in French, therefore sans serif typefaces are those without serifs. Sans serifs are more often used for interfaces where you want to achieve more modern, simple, or minimalist feel. Sans serifs are the most popular choice for body text in most UI designs. Great! Now that we know the main distinction between the two main categories, we can look at some sub-classifications which are so common it's helpful to know them. Slab serifs are typefaces with block-shaped serifs of generally the same thickness as the stroke weight of the letters themselves. It gives a more unique feel than a regular serif, however they are often harder to read when used for large blocks of text. They can be great for headlines though. Script typefaces are elegant and can be a solid decorative choice for your UI designs. However, they only work for larger headlines and really short blocks of text, as they can often cause difficulties in reading due to a lack of legibility. Black letter typefaces are decorative and give your designs an old-time look. On rare occasions, they might be perfectly on-brand choice for your projects, but to be honest, I don't recall a project where I use a black letter typeface. Handwritten typefaces mimic less formal handwritten text. They offer a more personal style but shouldn't be used for large chunks of text. Monospace typefaces are non-proportional. Letters and characters take precisely the same amount of horizontal space. If you want your brand to reflect coding or to have a typewriter style, they might be the way to go, but they're not commonly used in UI design though. Decorative typefaces encompass funny and unique styles. They can be extremely hard to read but can help you achieve a very original look. Display is a weird classification since it contains typefaces with qualities of any of the previously mentioned classifications. What defines them is the fact that they have been designed purely for large headings and short messages. They're often highly stylized, but they don't have to be. For example, Apple uses SF Pro text for sizes below 20 points, while SF Pro display for anything above that. Each character in Pro and text typefaces are designed slightly differently, with this constraint in mind. For example, the dot of the eye is set at different heights because it needs to be closer to the base of the eye at smaller sizes and further apart from the base at larger sizes. Those are all the main classifications of type I think you should be familiar with as a designer. Knowing this will massively help you choose the suitable typeface for any kind of project, but that's not all. There's one other thing I'd love to share with you, and it's another way to look at the main two classifications, serifs and sans serifs. And it can help you a lot when analyzing why one type works better than the other. When it comes to serifs, we can categorize them into three subcategories: dynamic, transitional, and static. As I already mentioned, this made historical classifications a lot more memorable for me. Hopefully, looking at typefaces from this perspective will make the differences a lot more noticeable and memorable for you as well. The same three groups exist for sans serifs too, so it's really good to pair two dynamic types together, for example, since they share common traits while also being different enough to work well together. There's one additional option for sans serifs, and that's geometric. Let's go through all of them. Dynamic typefaces are very humane in their shapes. That's why they are often called humanist or humanistic as well. They feel more handwritten and organic, showcasing the connection with the writing tool they're based on. They're commonly stressed at an angle. Dynamic serifs are often referred to as old style since they were inspired by the Roman capital letters. There is a low contrast of the strokes and the hairlines are heavier. Apertures tend to be larger and terminals end abruptly. The axis of the curved strokes shifts to the left and the X height is relatively small. Serifs feel very organic. Dynamic sans serifs are often referred to as the most readable sans serif styles. The contrast and the axis of the curved strokes are noticeable. Their contours tend to be wide open. Stress is slightly angled and X height is high. Transitional typefaces are more rationally coordinated with more regular letter forms. Some of them have rounded terminals and more balanced serifs. A mix of vertical and angled stress is often found in the glyphs of transitional typefaces. Transitional serifs are still bracketed, but the contrast is slightly higher. If you ever see realistic or baroque as the way to describe a typeface, these fall under this category. Stress on some glyphs is vertical while on others it's angled. Serifs feel more balanced and symmetrical and less organic. Transitional sans serifs are often referred to as grotesque or gothic. There is a certain squareness associated with them. Weight distribution is a bit awkward around balls of characters. Irregular curves are common. Even the round letters like E and O have obviously squared curves. Uppercase G is very recognizable and the X height is often low. Static, rational, or modern typefaces appear a lot more constructed. Stress is vertical. Serifs are more symmetrical and horizontal. Static serifs are often called Didone or neoclassical as well. When it comes to static serifs, the contrast between thick and thin strokes is incredibly high and serifs are no longer bracketed. Terminals are often bulbous. Static sans serifs have little to no contrast in the strokes. The terminals tend to be perfectly straight, so they feel more geometric. Single story G is common. Static and transitional sans serifs are probably the hardest ones to tell apart. Grotesques or transitional sans serifs appeared in the early 19th century. Static neogrotesques are a bit more refined. Grotesques have more uneven stroke contrast, mostly have double story Gs and a lower X height. Neogrotesques have more often a single story G, apertures are small, and they tend to be a bit more legible and uniform. Look for horizontal terminals and low stroke contrast. Neogrotesques are more refined in their style. They're often called rational. Geometric sans serifs are the most static form of all groups. They are constructed using geometric forms with round or square sections. There is minimal or no contrast and the strokes are very uniform. These typefaces tend to be less readable than the grotesques. Rounded forms are virtually circular and single story A is common. It takes a bit more practice to be able to recognize these qualities quickly, but once you get a hang of it, it makes all the difference. In the past few decades, the borders between different typeface divisions have become increasingly blurred, to the point where most typefaces contain hybrid references to multiple subcategories. The main one may be more or less dominant. Just think about the characteristics we went over in this video, practice analyzing type when you see a new one, and you'll be a pro in no time.